Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen Waitress gave us poor service, so I left her a $5 tip. After that, I do work here, but also I live here, and this isn't a PetSmart lady. And after that, am I the jerk for publicly calling out the school nurse? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get a tip. I knew you didn't have any money, Reddit boy. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen Waitress gave us poor service, so I left her a $5 tip. I found out my daughter was accepted to a prestigious middle school today. To celebrate, I told her we can take her and her friends to any restaurant she wanted to go to. We went to Texas Roadhouse, and there was myself and 6 other kids, including my daughter. Our waitress right off the bat seemed annoyed with our table. She was making faces, and when the kids ordered their drinks, mostly all Dr. Pepper, she got the order wrong. When I told her about it, she said okay and walked off. She then went to another table full of men, and I assumed she was talking about us because she was talking to the men, and they all, including her, turned back and looked at us. After about 10 minutes, the kids get their drinks and we order our food. Half got a small steak and half got chicken tenders. When the order comes, it's all chicken tenders except my steak. I once again tell her the order is wrong, and she rolled her eyes, says okay, and walks away. I did not want to make a scene since it was a celebration for my daughter, so I just let it go. Everyone eventually got what they ordered, and we finish our meals, and I pay the bill and leave a $5 tip. She immediately asks me what was wrong with our service, and I flat out told her she ignored us the whole time and made it seem like she did not want to wait on our table. The kids were well-mannered and did not cause any trouble. A few tables around us started laughing. She walked away almost in tears. I don't know if she was having a bad day, but am I the jerk? No, I wouldn't have left her a tip at all. I do work here, but also I live here, and this isn't PetSmart, lady. Recently, I have begun a dog walking and pet sitting business that I run out of my house with express permission from my landlord. I've worked with animals for years, and I'm grateful to finally be able to do it for a halfway decent living. That being said, I've been much busier than I anticipated, and as such, I've been a little stressed about overextending myself. I even had a nightmare about forgetting that I had to watch a dog, and the dog was left alone at their house for several days. Even though it was just a nightmare, this prompted me to get more serious about my organization and scheduling so I wouldn't miss anything. Nowadays, my schedule is rock solid and I've been super on top of it. I only say that so you guys can understand the immense confusion I felt when the doorbell rang at 2 p.m. on Monday and I heard a dog barking outside. I get my dogs calmed down and answer the door. On my doorstep is an elderly woman, maybe 80 years old, holding a very cute West Highland Terrier. For anyone not familiar, they're the dog on the Caesar dog food package. I'm honestly so confused by her being there that my mouth does not form words. I just sort of stand there, opening and closing my mouth like a fish out of water, while my brain is just screaming, "You forgot! You forgot!" After a moment, she graciously saves me from myself and talks first. I'll refer to her as LOL for Little Old Lady.
Hello, I'm Little Old Lady, and I'm here to drop off my dog for boarding.
At this time, I'm almost positive that my nightmares have literally come true, and I've straight up deleted a dog from my short-term memory. But as I'm racking my brain, I cannot remember ever seeing this dog or this woman before. Me. Hi, who is this little guy? Little Old Lady.
This is Chico. I was hoping to leave him with you for the weekend while I visit my grandson.
Okay, hoping. That's an interesting word. Now I'm less anxious, but more confused. Me. Okay, have we spoken about Chico before?
Oh no, but your neighbor Laura said you watch dogs, so I just brought him over.
Okay, now this is making more sense. Laura was my previous neighbor who had recently moved out. I had watched her dogs dozens of times, and she was always very kind to give my name out to people who were looking for dog sitters. Sometimes, however, she did treat me as on call, in the sense that she would call me as she was pulling out of her driveway to tell me she was leaving for the weekend and I would need to watch the dogs. She would play it off like she was so frazzled and forgot, but it started to get old after the 3rd or 4th time. At this point, I have a little old lady with her energetic dog on my porch, and still more questions than answers. So I invite her in while I try to get to the bottom of it. Come to find out, little old lady was a friend of Laura's mother, whom I had never met. Laura had a couple of my business cards at her house, and apparently the last time her mother was visiting, she took a couple of them to give to her friends. Apparently, Laura inherited her entitlement from her mother, as her mother told little old lady I was available anytime for dog sitting. Literally anytime. Worse yet, because Laura was my next door neighbor, Laura's mom figured out my address and gave it to little old lady. Because of that behavior, little old lady had the impression that I was a dog boarding facility, and she was just as confused as I was to arrange at a normal looking house. After we got it all explained, little old lady and I had a pretty big laugh about it. Little old lady was super apologetic and sweet, but I knew it really wasn't her fault, so there was no harm done from her. She was just a sweet old lady who got a little confused. Unfortunately, because I was already booked, I couldn't watch Chico. But good news. Little old lady determined she could just visit her grandson this weekend, and I went ahead and booked her for it. Chico and my dogs had plenty of time to socialize while little old lady and I were chatting, and they were becoming fast friends. I think I may have just fallen backwards into a great client. Still, I was a little upset, so I called Laura to please ask her mother to not tell people that they can just come by anytime. Laura was legitimately confused as to why it was an issue. After a few minutes of going around in circles, I simply said I can't watch any dogs that I don't know and left it at that. While I wish that was the end of it, 2 days later, Laura calls me to tell me that she has just left her house and could I please watch the dogs. I gently remind her that she had just moved 3 hours away and I was no longer her neighbor. She just gave a half-hearted, "Oh," and hung up. God bless her. Am I the jerk for publicly calling out the school nurse? I'm 34, male, and my daughter, who's 11, has type 1 diabetes. She's been diagnosed since she was 5. For the most part, she handles it like a champ, but she's a kid, and sometimes it sucks. I don't blame her when she's upset about it. She's gotten very good at managing how she's feeling and speaking up when she feels off or wrong. That said, she's 11, and the nurse and 2 of her block teachers are meant to supervise when she gives herself medication. We have a 504 plan in place at her school and have had it in place since diagnosis. I have conferences with teachers every year, and since she started at the middle school this year, her new nurse and administrative staff. I let my daughter speak her piece and let her feel heard. She struggled with non-school extracurricular before, ignoring her concerns when she says she doesn't feel good because she looks fine. This school year started the end of August, and we met a week prior. I got a call Monday afternoon while I was at work saying that the school bus driver had to call the ambulance for my daughter on the way home because she fainted. My job is 40 minutes away, so I said I would meet them at the hospital. She was awake and chatting with her nurse when I got there. Her blood sugar had dropped very, very low while she was at school. She was feeling better and didn't seem too bothered, so I took her home once allowed and let her pick a movie to watch. Once the movie was over, I asked if she didn't feel good at school. I needed to make sure she wasn't ignoring her symptoms and had eaten lunch. She told me that she felt weird just before the end of the day and checked her sugar with her teacher, who had sent her to the nurse when it was really low. When she told the nurse she needed glucagon, the nurse said no, and she should take it at home when she gets there. At this point, I was raging. The nurse did not give her medication and then sent her to the bus. The 504 plan in place has a stipulation that if her blood sugar is too low at the end of the day, she cannot take the bus home. The nurse is supposed to give her glucagon, and I get called to pick her up / arrange someone to take her home. The bus drivers aren't trained to know what to look for or to give her medication. I called the school Tuesday morning to arrange a meeting to talk about what happened. We scheduled it, but it hasn't happened yet. In the meantime, I went wild. Mile-long Facebook post with pictures of the 504 and hospital bill and me ranting. It kind of took off and got a lot of attention. Last night, my siblings and coworkers started telling me maybe I went too far in making the post, specifically in my naming the nurse. It was shared in a couple of different pages on Facebook for our county and town, and a lot of people have been making comments on the school board's social media about the nurse. A lot of the outrage comes from other parents with kids on 504 or IEP plans. Am I the jerk for calling out the school/nurse? No, maybe now the school can get rid of her and find someone who actually knows how to do the job. Don't touch the iPad? You got it. Until recently, I worked at a fine dining restaurant. I was there for 3.5 years, and the majority of that time I was a busser. By the time I left, I was the most tenured person in the front of house by a fair margin, including managers, which we burned through ridiculously quickly. And everyone I directly worked with had good things to say about my work ethic and how I was with the guests. I could be abrasive as a person, but if I was in your section, you'd have a smooth night, professionally. Some background. Our restaurant was 90% reservation. One wasn't required, but if you wanted a table at a certain time, you made one. On occasion, we'd have walk-ins or someone wouldn't show up to their reservation, but the number of covers, people, you walked into was usually pretty spot on to what you'd end up doing. Most of them were for two, but we'd also take larger tables. If the night was all two tops, we wouldn't set up for anything else, and anything bigger than a four top, we'd have to push the tables together. Not an issue, but a little time consuming to make sure every server was cool with the placement. Setup took between 2 and 3 hours, depending on how busy we were. Lastly, you'd figure out how busy we were from an iPad the hosts used, or that's how I did it. One winter, we had a shakeup. We had a new manager from our corporate parent take an open spot for a short-term contract. We'll call him Dave, and he quickly became one of my favorite managers. He was pretty no-nonsense and respected that he didn't know how our restaurant ran. Thus, he was open to talking through our reasoning and basically expected that we were good at what we did, unless we proved otherwise. Our hosts were mostly young ladies, like still in or just out of high school. In several instances, it was a first job ever because the compensation was, and still is, pretty crappy. You'd get what you pay for, and many of them didn't have the refinement one would expect when paying over $100 a head before tax, tip, and alcohol. One, who we'll call Kay, was pretty protective of the iPad, at least when it came to me. When I came in, I would breeze up to the host stand, look at the numbers for a minute, then go set up. She, apparently, brought up that I would do this for no reason to Dave and to his boss, who told Dave to get me to knock it off so HR wouldn't have to mediate. That would have looked bad for basically everyone. She never got upset when anyone else looked at the spread of tables, but I digress. He asked why I was touching the iPad. I responded that I was looking at the numbers, the big tops, special requests for tables, stuff like that. He asked why I wouldn't wait until pre-shift for that. I told him that was 15 minutes before service. I might be able to change things in time if that happened, but I'd miss the rest of pre-shift, and if I had to put together tables, the restaurant would be at least partially not set. He asked specifically what I needed, and I told him a breakdown of the tables by time is what I looked at. He said he'd make sure I had one when I came in and told me not to touch the iPad again. Cool, that works for me. The next day I come in and it's waiting for me, handwritten because the app we use doesn't play well with printers. The day after, I asked him for it and he said he had forgotten he'd get it to me. Took him half an hour to write it out and double-check that he didn't miss anything. The malicious compliance here is twofold. At some point between day 2 and 3, Dave realizes that he has other stuff to do rather than write out the spread of tables every day. He's been asked to not let me touch the iPad, and I've told him I won't. So he talks to Kay and tells her she needs to write it out, and it needs to be done by the time I get in, about half an hour after she does. She, like Dave, realizes it's a lot of work for something I'll look at for 30 seconds and asks him to let me look at the iPad again. Sorry, no can do. We've gotten complaints and we don't want HR to get involved. Kay comes to me and offers me the iPad when I get in. Sorry, I've been given a direct order. I'll take the spread when you're done writing it up though. I'd planned on relenting after a week, but the servers ended up loving seeing what was coming in, and it became a staple of the host's job from then on. Kay ended up quitting after getting into it with another manager, but her contribution of a handwritten spread by the host is still going strong as far as I know. Am I the jerk for making a budget to show my niece how hard it would be if she married her fiancé? My niece is engaged to her new boyfriend. They've been dating for 4 months and she's just 19. My brother told her that he will stop funding her life if she marries him. My niece is pretty spoiled. She visited me last week. I think she thought I would be supportive because I was also cut off because I refused to divorce my wife. She was telling me she knew it would be difficult, but she could manage because she loved him. I asked her if she had a budget. She said she didn't. I offered to help her make one, and she was enthusiastic. She didn't know how much he made, and when she texted him about it, he was being shady and not responding. So I assumed he would make $16 per hour and work 12 hours per day for 6 days and $10,000 in tips, and I assumed she would work the same hours and make the same amount. I then showed her how much things will actually cost and budgeted their figures in. I also emphasized that these were very generous assumptions on my part, and it's a rosier picture than reality. It still meant that she would have to make substantial changes to her lifestyle, and I think it dawned on her how drastically different it would be to date someone without money and be actually married to them. She asked me how we made it work, and I told her that my wife and I had sat down for hours before preparing budgets and getting ready to be cut off, and we were cut off in our early 30s and already had 2 great careers and received other inheritances, which had helped immensely. She was sober and serious when she left my house. She broke up with him and has moved back home. It appears she asked him about his salary and it was lower than my assumptions, and that freaked her out and she broke up with him. She's upset and she said I scared her and she really misses him. My wife says that I was a bit manipulative with my assumptions, as I did know that they were more generous than normal, and she would freak out when she tried to make a real budget. I did know that, and it does make me feel a bit bad. I feel like I played her here. ETA. I meant 10,000 yearly in tips, obviously not weekly. Am I the jerk?
No, sometimes people just need a reality check.
Just do as my supervisor says? No problem. This happened to me more than 10 years ago, so while it isn't as detailed as it could have been, it's very much burned into my memory. 2 to 3 months into my first job out of education, I'm working as a croupier, running the craps table at a casino. Enjoying it. That didn't last, fitting in nicely, etc. One day I'm dealing a game, giving a payout, and I carry on. My supervisor questions me whether I paid out correctly. I say I think I did, and went over my calculations, which were correct. I'm at the stage where people can see I'm picking everything up quickly, so I've been afforded just enough respect where the supervisor isn't sure himself. He got it checked on the cameras with the pit boss, and even though my calculations were correct, the chips I put out were not. Paid out slightly too much. Not a big deal, to be honest, but I did get taken aside by the pit boss a while after and basically told that if the supervisor says I'm wrong in these situations, to just go along with it. The chain of command in casinos is very rigid, to the point where to question something a superior says or does can be treated with contempt in most circumstances. It was a very informal chat, and I get along with both the supervisor and the pit boss, but the message is clear. Do as the supervisor says under any circumstance. This was no problem to me. It was my error, and yeah, these guys are going to be right over me at this stage in my career far more than the other way around. The very next day, I'm dealing a far bigger game with the only big punter of note in the building. Realistically, I shouldn't have been on this game with my experience level, but what the heck, I'm being trusted enough to do it, so let's have a good time. First big payout comes. I'm slightly hesitant, but get my chips out and ask the supervisor to check the payout. Different guy from the night previous, but someone else I really get along with. He has a brief look and exclaims, "You're short 10 pinks, mate." A pink in the casino is a $100 chip, so I'm a grand short. I have a look. There's no way I'm that far out. At this point, I'm not 100% sure I'm right, but I am 100% sure he is wrong. My personality is definitely the one where I would try to go through this with him to see if we can reach an agreement. However, the words of the previous night are ringing in my ears. Do not go against the supervisor, just do what they say. Okay, no problem. I get a grand more. Get the check, supervisor is happy, and the money gets paid out. This happens roughly 5 or 6 more times, ranging from 500 pounds more to a whopping 2,500 pounds more one spin. Each time I do as I'm told. I get replaced a while later with the punter delighted to be leaving with a healthy profit, and I go on break. While on my break, the guy who I considered my mentor at the time, rest in peace, is also there, and I go through the spins with him. His immediate reaction is, "Crap, son, every one of those have been overpaid. I would talk to the pit boss when you go back down." Head back down, the casino is basically completely empty. So before I go stand at a game with no punters, I ask the pit boss for a word. I explain what I believe has happened and ask just for a quick check on the cameras as, yeah, I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. The reaction of the pit boss was essentially, "Don't worry about it, mate. I was watching the whole game." Everything looked above board to me, even though you lost money. Good job on keeping the game moving. I plead one last time to just have a look. Nothing is going on right now. He sends me on my way to a table directly facing him at the desk, and he does have a look. The next 10 minutes I can only describe as the soul of a man slowly draining out of his body. With each spin he watches, the corners of his lips drop little by little, the color of his face lightening second by second, and his posture haunting each view. Of course, I'm standing there just watching him as he gets the manager over, followed by the deputy manager, who was also there and definitely keeping an eye on the game. Towards the end of the shift, the pit boss informs me that yes, I was right, and I have paid out roughly 7.5 thousand more pounds than I should have. This was a significant amount of money for the casino at the time. Fairly quiet, but a big chain of casinos, so nothing catastrophic. Internally, I'm freaking out, but calm as a cucumber on the outside. I say to him exactly what he said to me the night before. I was just paying out what the supervisor told me to. For the record, the chances of the supervisor working with the punter was slim to none. He was just distracted by the person on the other table trying to chat him up. Investigation comes up with a neutral manager who wasn't present at the time, and although most of the details have left my memory, the key part of the investigation boiled down to manager. On the games in question, you got the payout right every single time, internally dancing at hearing this bit. But every time, your supervisor tells you to add more, and you do and pay out. Were you aware that you may be right and he may be wrong in these instances? Me. I was aware I may be right, but I was by no means 100%, and I trusted someone with 20 plus years experience to be right over me. Manager. If you thought you may have been right, why not question it at the time? Me. Well, the night before I was explicitly told to do as my supervisor says under all circumstances, not to even think about arguing the toss, and nothing bad can happen. Not to mention that this would not have even been brought to anyone's attention if I hadn't said anything. Considering the supervisor, pit boss, manager, and even the deputy general manager didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Definitely a good half-minute of silence following this. I'm in this weird mental state where I'm really scared they're going to just fire me, but also thinking, wow, I'm actually the only competent person in this whole situation. What follows was a verbal warning for myself. Definitely shouldn't have even gotten that, and should have appealed, but was happy to just take it and prove myself from there on, with everyone else involved getting written warnings and more. However, I was essentially rewarded with being able to learn a new game, which helped push my wage up a decent amount, and got a fair bit of respect with the boys for basically showing everyone else up. Oh, and I never saw that punter again. Am I the jerk for telling my ex that if he's so concerned about Christmas, he can buy our daughter her gifts? I have a 14-year-old daughter, Alice. Her father, John, and I are separated, and as far as dads go, he's not the best, but he claims he tries, despite not having so much as sent her a birthday card since she was 6. I recently injured myself and am currently not fit for work, so I'm now getting disability payments that's about 3 times less than what I was earning in my job. So we're on a pretty tight budget, and I'm not able to save for Christmas this year as I normally do. My daughter told me she wanted a Nintendo Switch and a few games for it for Christmas back in August. I ask her around this time and start saving. And even though she's disappointed that it's not a viable option anymore, she understands that we're on a budget and that she needs to choose something on the lower end of the price spectrum. She managed to find a secondhand 3DS that comes with games, including ones she wanted for the Switch, for a really good price, and she's happy with that. She casually mentioned to her father on one of the video calls he actually answered that she wasn't able to get her original gift idea, but she found a more cost-effective one and she's happy with it. He asked to speak to me, and when my daughter brought me out her phone, he started berating me, saying I needed to return to work so my daughter can have the Christmas she deserves. I told him, John, you haven't even seen Alice in person for 2 years, and you haven't sent her a gift, a card, or even a happy birthday in nearly a decade. If you're so concerned about our daughter getting the Christmas she deserves, maybe you can pay the court-mandated child main that you haven't paid in 5 years. Or you can buy the presents yourself, since you claim to be earning a $1,000 a week. He hung up the phone and texted my daughter, saying not to call him for a while as he's extremely angry. She's glad I stood up to him, but she's upset that he doesn't want to speak to her and is angry with me because I caused that. Am I the jerk? Edit. My daughter's father lives in a different country. It would be nearly impossible to get the child support off him, and I do firmly believe he's not declaring his earnings, so there would be no record of them. Manager told me to obey them or quit, so I quit. This was back in 2018. I was trying to find a job and I was getting desperate. I ended up getting a temporary job at a call center that did tech support for pharma sales reps. The first 6 months were fine. My contract kept getting renewed and it was going fine. They even onboarded a new client and I got to know them and they were wonderful. I ended up having a good relationship with them. As time went on, things were going a bit south. Things that we normally would not do, we ended up doing. As an example, doing hardware replacements over the phone and we were bending over backwards for the OG client. The reason why was because contract negotiations were coming up, so they were trying to make themselves look good. So much so, the second client was going to the wayside. So I was one of the new who handled their tech tickets for the second client. They were very appreciative. Not to mention at this time, layoffs happened to some of the best people and the trainer who trained me was also laid off. I never got told why. At my 1-year mark at the company, a user who has been known to fry laptops called in. His hard drive had failed and he wanted it fixed. He was told he'd need to send the laptop in, but he did not want to. The agent sent him a hard drive and told him someone would walk him through it. Background on this guy is he fried other laptops doing this because he wouldn't listen and that agent always got fired. My boss told me I would need to be the one to do it and I expressed concern and told him I did not feel comfortable doing it. He told me to try and it'll go fine. I told him no way I was doing it. He then said I would need to do it or quit my job. I told him, fine, I quit. He then tried to talk to me about it and I shut it down. I told him I was quitting and I turned in my company stuff. The second client reached out to me a week later asking what happened, so I told them the truth. What I did not realize was that they were also in contract negotiations, so they pulled their contract and went to another outsourcer. So did the first company I found out. That first company was one of their bigger clients, so losing that hurt them. I don't know what really happened to everyone after that. It might not seem too exciting, but this was my malicious compliance I had. Am I the jerk for not doing anything for my daughter's birthday? My daughter, let's call her Thea, turned 15 last Saturday, and due to everything going on, we couldn't really celebrate it. I asked her a few days before if there was something special that she wanted to do, and she said no. On the day of her birthday, I asked her if she wanted me to order a cake, and she refused that too. She's introverted and doesn't like making a big deal of things, so I let it be. She spent most of her day talking to her friends on call, and I cooked a nice dinner for her and my son. My wife is usually the one who organizes birthdays and stuff, but she's been living with her mother for the past few days due to some health issues. On most birthdays, my wife is also met with the "I want nothing" by my daughter, but she does stuff anyways. She usually bakes a cake, buys some gifts, and cooks all her favorite foods. The next day, on call, she asked me what I did for Thea's birthday, and when I told her my daughter didn't want a celebration, she blew up on me. According to her, my daughter is too shy to ask for things and doesn't like asking people to make a fuss about her birthday. She was very angry that I didn't even buy her a cake, even after I repeatedly told her that Thea said she didn't want a cake. According to her, these are things that should be done without asking. I would like to mention that my wife coddles my kids a lot. I thought that was the end of the conversation. Later in the evening, my brother-in-law showed up with cake and gifts for Thea. My wife probably asked him to do so, but he's very close to the kids, so I didn't think much of it. But then he jokingly said to me, "What kind of father doesn't buy cake for his kid's birthday?" I told him the same thing again, and he said that having your birthday during everything going on is horrible enough, and I should have just bought some cake. I agree, it is, but she said she didn't want it. It's been annoying me a lot. I hate how both my wife and brother-in-law keep implying that I don't know what my own kid wants. I just want to know, am I really the jerk? I just did what my daughter asked. More information. 1. I did not do nothing for my daughter. I made pizza for dinner, which she loves. I also sang her the birthday song and hugged her really tight. There was someone who had a problem with that. My daughter isn't big on physical contact, but she likes to hug people on their birthdays. It's a tradition she started. I was not forcing her to do something that she didn't want to do. 2. The whole buying the cake on the same day. I don't know how hard it is where you live, but as long as I can remember, cakes are bought on the day of the birthday. I did not know this was something people didn't do. Unless of course it's a customized cake, and we haven't done that for the kids since they were 10. 3. My wife is not a horrible person. A little bit overbearing, sure. She did wish my daughter a happy birthday in the morning, but she's busy taking care of her mother. Update. Wow, I can't believe the number of things people picked apart from this post. Some of you are worse than English teachers trying to find hidden meanings in blue curtains. However, I decided to apologize to her. I did speak to my daughter. I sat her down and apologized for not doing anything or buying a cake, and her only response was, "Papa, chill, it's just a birthday." I did give her money, and before you get on my case of how unthoughtful that is, she usually spends her money on books or clothes. I feel those are hard things to pick for anyone, not just my daughter. I would rather she buy something she likes than be stuck with something she doesn't. I think the major problem for people is that I waited till the day of her birthday to buy her a cake, which means I don't care about my daughter. I don't know what to say about that. Getting a good cake isn't that hard. People keep saying I should have pre-ordered so they don't run out of cakes. If the store doesn't have what I want, I'll just go to another store. There's a million of them. Also, that one person who got on my case for saying my daughter instead of our daughter needs to calm down. I'm gonna end this here. Thanks to all the people who sent me an award. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or did he do nothing wrong? Please let us know. I dare you to not get me a cake on my birthday, Mr. Reddit. Huge shout out to our newest official channel member, Krista. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means the world to Reddit Boy and I. Support the channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. And come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.